promised land was before them, that God was going to give it to them. But what did they conveniently forget? God. God said, I'm going to put you in the promised land. I'm going to lead you to the promised land. This is a promise I give to you if you are obedient to what my word is. If you are obedient to the law. And what did they do? They cried at every turn. They get over on the edge of the land. Oh, the land is this, and they got some big old giants in there, you know, and they got this and they got that. We could never be powerful enough and whoop and cry and carry on. 10 of the spies. 2 of them said, let's go, man. Let's go, God. With God, we're able to do it. And the other said, no. So what happened? They were condemned by their own sin to walk in the wilderness for 40 years. And you know what was going to happen to them? All of them under the age of, was it 20 or 40? 20 were going to die. Well, they'd been wandering for quite a few years here already. So some of this discontent was from the idea that you took us from the land of, it's interesting that they reversed the words. You took us from the land of milk and honey. Where was the land of milk and honey according to them? Isn't that ironic? Isn't that so like man? To pray to be relieved of the burden of slavery and the bondage that they were in and the hard lives that they had to ask God to save them. And when God saves them from that and is going to lead them in the other land, all the time they're looking back and wishing they were back over there where they had the milk and honey, they're saying. Obviously didn't have the right attitude about it, did they? They also did not recognize what's the problem. Is Moses the problem? Is Aaron the problem? What's the problem? They are. They are themselves because they rebel against God. They get thirsty. And what do? Do they start looking for a river, or they start looking for the next 7-Eleven so they can buy some bottled water? Or what do they do? Oh, God is mistreating us so badly because we don't have any water to drink. And they asked Moses to do that. Understand that. Isn't that an attitude the world has? I was telling Susan when Pastor was gone a couple of weeks ago, thanks to Al and Jay, I'll blame them right out front. They were here cleaning the church, and a lady comes up wanting to meet with somebody. They knew what they were doing. And they called me, got me on the phone, and I suspected as what it was, but I thought, well, you never know. It could be an honest searcher. And I come up here, and I'm sorry, but there are professional bag people in the world who make a living by going around to churches looking for handouts, and who make a living by hanging signs up saying, please help me, I'm homeless, and that type of stuff. Now, I'm not saying, don't misunderstand me, I'm not saying that all are that way. But there are some who are. She was one of those. We sat and talked for about 45 minutes. And in essence, what she was saying is that God is not being fair to me because my life has turned hard. And she finally made a comment, well, I would rather be, what's that, an agnostic than to see that God's people aren't interested in helping people. I asked her 4 times, what can we do for you? What is your need? Never got an answer. Never got an answer. You know what she wanted? She wanted money. Wanted us to put her in a hotel and feed her and this type of thing. And she got angry when I told her that and maybe you don't know this, but we cooperate with all the other churches in the area in support of HopeLink. So when people come around our church looking for a handout looking for some help, we usually take them to HopeLink or refer them to HopeLink to do that. She didn't want anything to do with that. She went into a long story. But what I'm after here is the attitude was this. If God's not going to give me goodies, then I'm not going to worship Him. That's the attitude these people had. If God's not going to give us what we want, then we're not going to walk with Him. Now, how far does that attitude go with God? Not very far. You know something, folks? If you right now were ushered up into heaven and you were put right before the throne of God, what would you do? Fall on my face. Would you go in, hey, how you doing, buddy? How you been lately, old man? That's what some people call God. Oh, the man upstairs. You know, last week I need a few bucks and you didn't send me anything, Dad. No, we're not going to be, disrespectful like that. We're going to be so in awe of God, we're going to fall on our face. We're going to think that we're dead because of the awesomeness of God. Well, that's the attitude that some people have. And they began to convince themselves, and that's what Korah and these guys, so they want to grab, they accuse Moses and Aaron of making themselves better. And leaders have to work at that, frankly. Some leaders do act that way, don't they? They act like they're better than other people or they're more superior, and that's a lousy attitude to have in any kind of leadership, particularly in the church. But they want to have this power themselves. So Moses, he's a pretty slick dude. He says, all right, here's what we're going to do. You guys come back tomorrow, and I want you to bring a censer. And I'm not real sure what a censer is, but I know that they're those things that they swing around and give off smoke and have fire in them, and I'm not sure how they're made. Somebody'd have to explain that to me someday. But he said, y'all come back over here, and you bring your censers. And we're gonna go to the tabernacle, and we're gonna go before God, and let's see which one of us God says is to be in the place that He's in. Now, is there a problem at this point? I don't know about you, but I'm not real sure that I'd want to be in the front row. Would you be clamoring to say, well, let me be number one to stand before God and tell Him that I want to be a priest, I want to be a high priest, I want to be this, I want to be that. I'm not real sure I'd feel real positive about that. There'd been some things that had happened, and some people died. In fact, if you read some of the stories, you're not talking about a dozen or 24 people that died, but you're talking about, in this one case here, later on, 14,000 are killed by God because of their rebellion against Him. So, folks, it's a serious thing to think about standing in the presence of God. Well, they accused of a land of milk and honey, and they said, you brought us out here in the desert to kill us off, and you know, they're just questioning the leadership. Well, they come the next day, and boy, some horrible things happen. You remember? What happened? Someone tell us. Someone tell me the story. What's that, Susan? Yes. Yeah. All of Israel are these guys, these 250 princes, this Korah and his buddies. They're coming up here with their censers, and picture this now. They're following Moses and Aaron, and they come up to the tabernacle. You know what happens first? God says to Moses, "Get out of my way. I'm going to kill them all. I'm going to kill the whole nation and start again of you and make a new nation." Do you suppose those people back there thought that? They thought, oh, well, we're popular with people, and we've been voted leader of the year, and we've been this and we've been that. Does that matter to God? God does what God chooses to do. So Moses, first of all, Moses and Aaron fall down on their face, and they Lord, please don't do this, and they intercede for the nation. And then God says, Moses did his prayer, where he talks about, if I'm right in these, this is my translation, okay, save you trouble reading it. If my position is right and I'm walking with you and leading like I should, the ground's going to open up and eat all of these people. If not, it won't happen. Well, he'd no sooner finished speaking than what happened. And you know what? It didn't stop there. That's what one of the things, these guys over here in the tent that we read about a while ago who said we're not going to come up, but we agree with them. God told Israel, get away from those people. Get away from those tents. Because the ground opened up and consumed them too. It's interesting, some of the language when you look at it, because you know what it sounds like? It sounds like that the very doors of hell were opened up and all these people were dumped down there. Straight to hell. Whoa! How many of them? Quite a few. Quite a few. Now, it's unfortunate in the first place that Moses and Aaron even had to defend their leadership. But let me tell you something. The problem here was not the leaders. The problem here was the walk of the people with God. They were not trusting God to do what He is going to do. And we have said this before, and we've talked about this before. There is not another generation that has ever walked this earth that has seen more visible manifestations of the power of God than these people. Look, all of that in Egypt that they saw. What would you think? You'd think that they'd fall on their face before God and never want to rebel or do nothing again except follow Him. All the power, the Red Sea, the killing of all these things that took place because of how many of you have ever seen a sea fall on itself? How many of you have ever seen a sea open up? I've fished all my life and I've yet to see a body of water part. It always stayed together. That happened. They saw it. Who did they think was doing it? The good fairy? Was blowing out there to separate? No. They knew it was God, so they saw all of these things. And yet still would rebel. Well, some lessons to learn. God determines the ministry of each individual. Be careful. Be careful. God has a purpose for you. God has a ministry for you. And it may be any number of things. But be careful, because sometimes what can happen is that even in church, Satan can get in and cause you to be envious, to be unhappy, to think, I can do that as well as he can. You ever thought that? I have to admit I have, because I'm sort of strong-willed. But I can do that. Or why shouldn't I be doing that? God has a ministry. God has a purpose. God has something that He's using you to do. Be thankful for that. Zero in on that. Zero in on your walk. Zero in on your desire to serve Him and to recognize that just because you get hit with a left uppercut doesn't mean that God is deserting you. I could ask for a show of hands, and I would venture to say that almost everybody here probably took some kind of punch last week. Right out of nowhere. Zowie! Something happened with one of the kids. Something happened with your parents. Something happened at work. Something happened here. Something happened there. That's life. Is that God's fault? Is that reason for me to turn and have an attitude it's child, isn't it? When I pray, do I give God my latest Christmas list? I want this, I want that. That's childish. That's not spiritual maturity. Spiritual maturity and walking with God says, I'm here for the long haul. I'm going to walk with the Lord, and I know that there's going to be things that are going to... You think there isn't anything that's going to happen the rest of your life that isn't going to be unhappy for you?